in life, when there's problems or something, I don't like what's going on, or if I'm even just trying to be me, I either just agree, I become an agreeable person, I zone out, dissociate, my attention just scatters, or during disagreement, there's not much of a way I support my own reasons or feelings. I kind of either give up or really don't know what to say. Ultimately, I realize I want to be heard, but feel scared to. I mean, why would there be all this hesitation or struggle? And if I do share how I feel or how I think, especially if there's a problem, but just even in general, I don't think I sound too confident. I don't feel that confident, although I'm trying to. So ultimately, I rarely ever just enjoy being me, being relaxed, being comfortable, simply just enjoying my life, which would, at the most basic level, is just enjoying how I think and feel, whatever I'm doing or whatever I'm experiencing, such as even if it's a nice day out, not relax enough to realize anything unless I really put attention on it. Doesn't just come natural. More times than not, it doesn't. Like, if I'm just living my life and I notice something that's cute or cool looking or funny, I'm not relaxed enough. And there's nothing going on that's really causing that. It's like this constant way of avoiding vulnerability. Just being me. It's as if there's this protector and maybe something separate being the avoider, or perhaps they're this same thing of my heart, of just being able to be who I am. I'm not a great listener, and I feel it's because I'm not a great listener to myself. So how could I be a good listener for anyone else? If I try to stand up for myself because I feel disrespected or I feel something's wrong or I have a problem with anything, and therefore try to set boundaries, and I could understand if I'm being abrasive, but regardless, being nice about it or not, once someone has a comeback or they defend themselves, even reasonably so, no matter what, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. It's like I'm stuck. They could just be being honest, or maybe they're being manipulative. Either way, the result's the same. I can barely articulate back what I think or feel without getting too angry, which could lead to being threatening or, at the very least, disrespectful. Or I just give in. It's as if I don't care or can't care what another person says, thinks, or feels. Not only in conflict or disagreement or opposing points of view, but even when there is none. It's hard to be vulnerable to even care when there's nothing to be threatened by. I'd like to feel angry if I'm angry and sound angry if I'm angry, but I generally tone that down or completely suppress it. Especially during conflict, confrontation, or just setting boundaries. So I think back on this in my life, and I'm like, well, why am I like this? Well, what has happened in my life? There's a reason this exists. This isn't just because you are the way you are. You are the way you are from your experiences of life. And you can be different moving forwards because you have new experiences of life that cause that to occur. So I think back to when I was a kid. It's as if what happened to me, why I am the way I am now, because as a kid, I was just trying to be me, just like any kid, just any child, just trying to be themselves. And I think there might have been times that I was made fun of or challenged when I was just being me, sharing opinions, just being a kid, having my likes and dislikes and not really having much of a filter for it perhaps, but not being rude to anyone. Well, maybe I was annoying, maybe. It's possible. I don't believe so, or at least not to the degree of like it being intolerable, but I think generally kids, when they're speaking their mind or they're just being loud or what have you, yeah, that could be annoying, but I don't think I was generally that kind of kid, and perhaps I was. But either way, it's possible that this was made fun of or challenged. And as a kid, how do you respond to that? If you're being condemned for just being you. You don't have the skills. You don't know what to do. It's almost like you're put in a spot of flight or fight, and what's wrong? So, I think as a child I learned early, if this was the case, I wouldn't know what to say or do. So yelling or screaming or crying or having a tantrum because it doesn't feel good, well, similar to how I'm in as an adult, but being more of in an adult way of handling not being me, being shut down, not knowing how to handle it. So, learning early on, it's to not be me for some reason. So it pretty much resembles me today. And in this adult form, I try to control that rage. Or just say it's not worth it. This rage of just wanting to be me. Therefore, I enable myself. And if I'm unable on myself, then it's quite possible I'm unable on another if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing or being a certain way that's not healthy or it's not okay. Well, I'm unable on them because look at what we're learning. We learned that this is the way it is. Not much thought will go into this beyond that. When we're in these circumstances, you'll be you the way you are, they'll be them the way they are, and we'll move on. What more can take place if there's not anything that helps to guide otherwise? So no doubt there's a missing guided voice within a child. And the child needs that guidance. They need to be able to feel. They need to be able to learn that it's not who they are that's wrong. Perhaps what they're doing, or the way they're being or whatever, it's not appropriate or it's not the right moment or whatever, but in a way that they could understand, or at the very least help them to realize they're still loved. I don't think I was ever really given that. I'm not blaming my parents. I think they had their ways. Everyone has their ways. And this isn't something that's, I don't know, instinctively understood. I'm not sure if some people know how to respond to a child or what have you. But I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying. Or, this could have all been a result of me being a kid, and at some point I was punished for raising my voice. So instead of just punished for being myself, and as in the earlier example, and not knowing what to do, and therefore shutting that off in life, and having all this anger and pain, well, now it's possible, and this could also be in a conjunction, but I'm being punished for raising my voice when I'm disagreeing with another. I'd like to say disagreeing with my dad. I think my mom either enabled me to be louder or more disagreeable. Not saying that was helpful to me. Maybe in some cases it could have been, but I believe raising my voice or disagreeing with my dad if I'm being scolded for something that I didn't realize I did wrong, or I did wrong, okay, well, I'm just a kid. Did I do it on purpose? Do I realize what the consequences were? Is it anything of it really even that severe to have such a reaction? Well, if that's the case, right, you're being stopped in that moment, scolded or reprimanded, which doesn't feel good to anyone. No one likes to be reprimanded. I'm not saying you can't reprimand anyone, especially a child, but I think there's a way. But if the child then feels really bad or awful or closes down or doesn't like that, is like, what the hell? I don't like the way this feels. And by the way, they're doing this all subconsciously, or they're just not aware, just as if we were to respond to something that doesn't feel good in our body. We respond by, going against it or doing something about it. But in this case, being a kid, if you're going against what doesn't feel good, especially at you, towards you, about you, because of you, you're most likely to either give up, give in. If you've learned that's the easiest way, but in this case, that eventually became the way. But I think because disagreeing, arguing, defending my child self, well, let's just say that didn't work out. So being punished, reprimanded, to begin with. No, you have no say, although you don't understand exactly what's going on or what has happened. And now you're trying to, although you have no ability to really understand what's occurring, now, well, you raised your voice about something you don't fully understand. You don't feel like you're in the wrong when you don't even understand? How dare you? Well, let's just say that didn't turn out well, and oh, look at me now, right? It makes sense why I can't, to this day, where I struggle immensely to disagree, or say no, or set boundaries. And it's scary to even just be me. You know, if I can't disagree, right? If I can't disagree, then how is it possible to just be joyful? I mean, doesn't being joyful naturally cause or allows there to possibly be a problem for which you may or may not disagree about? Meaning, joyfulness is vulnerability. Vulnerability is, well, I'm free to be this way. I like this way. This is natural. This is freeing. But something bad could happen. What I'm trying to ultimately say here is it's as if being joyful is threatened as well. Which, what I'm ultimately saying here is just being myself. If I can't disagree, I can't be myself. I'm not saying to be myself is to be a disagreeable person, but disagreeing has to coexist with being agreeable to be me. Because if there's a problem, well, I first off would like to be able to be free enough to try to understand what the problem is, and then to be able to handle it or try to handle it. What I'm trying to say is they're like one and the same thing. It's like without one just existing, you don't really have the other. Perhaps it's just fear to be joyful. Because if I was just to be me and be happy, and confronted with the Father who welcomed that with hugs and kisses and closeness, but at times I would do something wrong, or he'd be annoyed, or he'd be so angry, and that would be really scary as a kid. So then why would I want to be close? Why would I want to be vulnerable? Why would any of that feel good? So that this idea makes sense too. There could be multiple things going on here. So you just eventually over time, you condition yourself unconsciously in an effort to have self-preservation, a sense of self-safety. Not only physically, but emotionally. It's not safe to be heartfelt. Or perhaps, being scared to defend myself if I'm being punished or what have you. Because how do you defend yourself if the person's bigger, angrier, more threatening, and just overall scarier? Who would want to defend against that? Even as an adult, I mean, we're more likely to be like, it's okay. I'm going to do what you say, you know? So as a result, you shut down being who you really are. Not only in those situations, which may actually be really helpful, but you can see this becomes a learned response, which ultimately becomes a pattern of a way of being. But how do you open yourself to someone who really hurt you? You don't trust that person anymore. And in a way, you learn to not trust yourself, to just be open, especially around someone who, if it's consistent enough, and unfortunately in this case this is at home, because if it was outside the home, I could see there being flexibility. I would say you would still have some issues, like me, but maybe it wouldn't be as bad. I guess it depends on what those outside issues are, but let's just say they're very similar. At least at home you would be safe. At least at home you would be able to have a pattern of more joy, of more freedom, of more self-expression. And I think that would be in proportion to more the fear that eventually exists otherwise. If this wasn't a consistent basis as it was for me, or anyone else that's in similar situations or have had similar situations. And this to me makes the most sense. Because maybe I feel but by defending myself, I will be punished. I will be hurt. And the real me would have to be present in order to really stand up for myself, saying, no, I don't appreciate this, or I respect myself, or I don't like that, or I'm not going to be devalued, or whatever the case. I'm not going to be minimized or rejected, or, I'm not abandoning myself, right? But, you learn that, well, you can't do that, and if you do, good luck. So this becomes equal to a sense of danger. Ultimately, just being you, being able to stand up for yourself, equals danger. This ultimately is your identity, your sense of security, who you are. And in this case, it's dangerous to do that. It's not okay. So much so, this will never exist. It's almost as if just being you equals being punished. Go ahead and be you. You will be punished. You won't like it physically. And even if you weren't hurt physically, well, you sure as hell aren't going to like this emotionally. That's punishment. That's abuse. But ironically, although this may be true, or this could seem like there's some accuracy of this sense of self equaling the idea of unsafety or punishment, I'm actually punishing myself by continuing to live like this. Because I tell you, it's miserable. It doesn't feel good. trying to be me. It doesn't feel good trying to stand up for myself. It doesn't feel good having an opinion. It doesn't feel good, so I work around it. And regardless of the outcome, at the end of the day, I still just don't feel good. Well, I think I know why. Look at all the things I've mentioned. So I have some ways to work with this, not around it. And I'm not saying it's not okay to work around it, because the ways you work around it is what I'd like to call compensation strategies that you most likely have developed unconsciously, such as being a people pleaser, or being someone who, walks on eggshells. You don't really speak your mind. Or if you do speak your mind, well, you speak your mind very directly. That's another compensation mechanism, to have a sense of, I'd like to say a false sense of security. But look how demanding people get. Look how demanding you are. So no matter how you look at this, there are so many ways we compensate, and we're really just not being authentic. But we're trying to be, but that's the trying is the compensation. And generally the compensation techniques are, I'd like to say they're toxic. They're not going to really create authentic relationships. You're not going to really feel like you could really be yourself. You're not going to really allow another to just really be themselves. It gets very complicated, and people call this toxic. It is toxic. And then we don't understand, why don't I like my partner, or why I don't like myself, or what is going on. And there's really nothing that's so severe, and there could be really severe situations going on within friendships and relationships and what have you, that you're like, no, this is the really freaking problem. Or we might even blow that out of proportion. It's really not in conjunction to what, we're not looking at it properly. So, but I'm not here to confuse or to really even go into that. I just want to stay focused that there are ways to compensate. And I like to say, when we compensate, it doesn't feel good. And the whole point here is, in life's not easy. None of this is going to be easy. How we work with others, how we work with our emotions, any situation, no matter how difficult it is, none of it's easy for anybody, right? But we compensate to try to make it easy. But those techniques or strategies, the way we're going to be instinctively, pretty toxic. And if it works out for us and we learn that was okay to do, but it's not going to be okay to do in every circumstance, it's not going to work out. And then we don't learn that, and we think they're the problem and we're the problem, and it goes back and forth. People are the problem, we're the problem, together we're the problem. The whole idea here is, this isn't a matter of just feeling good, right? It's uncomfortable being in these circumstances. But what's more uncomfortable? Being in these circumstances, or being ourselves? And I ultimately find being myself is more uncomfortable than being in these circumstances. It's not going to feel good no matter what, but I think I'd feel better if I was more comfortable being myself, no matter what, even in these circumstances or not in them. That's the goal. Because then I can handle the circumstances, because it's not a matter of the circumstance that I'm ultimately really handling, although it is. I mean, you're handling the situation, but I'm handling how I feel. I'm handling what's going on the inside. I'm handling all my insecurities. I'm handling how this works within me. That's ultimately what's being handled at first, or perhaps in conjunction. So, moving on here. I have in a way, like a 2-step plan that could be helpful. So, I guess the way to not be like this, which I would say, well, it's just me, this is me, but this is what we say when we don't really know how to look at it, because it is just us, isn't it? It is, but it's an us that has experienced life in such a way that molded us to be this way. And you could experience life in such a way that molds you not to be like this, and happier and healthier. But I'd like to say, I guess the way to not be like this is to realize I am being like this. This is how I feel. Not to completely just not work with it and just say, well, this is just me. Well, that's, you know what that is? That's a coping mechanism. So instead of just acknowledging, accept that I have issues. Accept, not that I am an issue, but I have these ways of not being vulnerable, and these ways of preventing myself to be honest and real, and ways that, well, ultimately that's the struggle, is to just realize this is real, this is happening, this has been going on for probably your whole life. So I have 2 steps here that can help with this once you become more aware and are truthfully in acknowledgement, because this isn't easy to do, and that's part of the problem. It's okay to be uncomfortable, and it's okay to possibly have considerations that you don't agree with, because you just want the truth, don't you? So either way, once you can get through this, to just say, well, this is how I feel in these moments. There is discomfort, there is uncomfortability, there is... So step 1, 2 would be to allow myself to be just me, even if it's uncomfortable. To be just me. Because I think that the uncomfortability is that someone's going to have a problem with this, and I'm going to have to either shut down or shut them up. In a way, we call that standing up for ourselves. But, so the fear ultimately is just being me. Even if it is just taking a walk around the block, or, driving to work, or whatever. Just be you, all right? And realize, well, there's fear to do this, and I think the fear is because I was being condemned, or I developed an unhealthy way to allow this to exist out of fear of just being me. So I have to say in my mind, if anyone has a problem with this, just being me, I'm allowed, because I'm an adult, or I'm older, and I have the skills, I have much better of an ability to stand up for myself respectfully, mind you, than I did when I was a 5-year-old. And if somebody has a problem with this, with just being me, say something about it. I don't appreciate it. And leave it at that. Knowing that they're the one in the wrong. Meanwhile, this is going to be uncomfortable, but the uncomfortability is me just being me, and to support just being me instead of to have to force someone to accept me, or to force myself to accept myself. No, simply not appreciate it, mention it, and leave it at that. There's no need to go further into it. There's no need to even explain. That person should, which it's not an expectation, but it is something that people should do. They should ask themselves, what did they do wrong? Maybe they don't realize that they did something wrong. Maybe they do. Either way, you leave it up to them. It's not up to you for how they think and feel about this. Unless you completely are disrespectful, then yeah, you're now a part of this big problem. But that's not the case here. The case is the fear is to be you as a result of being punished being you. So realize, well, you might be punished to be you. And if someone, when they do, well, you're older now. You put yourself in a situation for this to occur because it resembles the situation when you were a kid. You're trying to be you as a kid. You're being punished for just being you. And you can't even stand up for yourself because when you do, while trying to be just be you, well, guess what? You're further punished. This is what you have to do. You have to be in situations that you contribute at least to some degree, because then you can improve and practice just being you. And it's going to be different for everybody. And the point I'm trying to say is to allow that. And when there's a conflict with another that's trying to prevent it, or they're trying to stop it, or they want to laugh at it, or they have a problem with it, well, you're old enough so when you say something back, you're doing it in an effort to stand up for yourself, but you don't need to be a kid standing up for yourself anymore. You don't need to have a tantrum. You don't need to yell or scream or cry. You don't need to give in. You're older. You have the skills. You have the ability to articulate a hell of a lot better than a 5-year-old. I have a problem with with you laughing at me, or with you making fun of me, or whatever. Whereas a 5-year-old, they could say those words too. Why couldn't they? It's very similar. The main difference here is I'm older. You're a hell of a lot older, right? And you could have more confidence. Whereas a kid, there's a lot of uncertainty, and you also maybe weren't guided to do that, which I don't believe I was. So then that hence further establishes less of an ability to be yourself, because you don't even have the right words or the right thoughts or experiences to help to mold that. So now you want to put yourself in situations, because your mind, from what I learned, doesn't really differentiate time. It just differentiates moments, meaning you're struggling now because you've struggled your whole life, or you've struggled a lot in life. You're going to struggle now. That's the way it's going to be, because it identifies you as you regardless, not because of age. To the brain, you're the same age. The point I'm trying to make here is, okay, if time is in a way irrelevant, circumstance is more relevant. Create a new circumstance. So the brain then gets used to, well, you're no longer like this. You're no longer like that. You no longer are afraid, or you're no longer just give in. You now articulate better. You now have a firmer position, or a more honest position, or more vulnerable position. And this is awkward. This is different. This is new. Just like if it was awkward, different, and new as a kid, but now you're older. Okay. This is what I'm doing about it now. And it may be so hard to unwire or just recreate new synapses or brain waves to help adjust to this, in a way, new identity. Well then, only time will tell, because it will take time for this to develop. Let's just say in a situation like this where you're just being you and you feel like you're being made fun of or something, someone has a problem with you just being you, let's just say this turns into them being like, what are you talking about? I'm not ultimately just saying leave it up to the person and be like that. What I'm saying ultimately is you don't have to really engage with another when you're dissatisfied. They should ultimately have the ability, and I guess it really depends on who you're talking to and their age and their ability to even be like this, because I think a lot of people are reactive or defensive, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It doesn't just have to be because it's the way they were molded in life. It could just be biological, right? It could just be an innate human response to, like, well, this feels dangerous. There's a problem, right? It's kicking on a flight or fight. No matter how you want to look at this, the point I'm trying to make is, if they have to say anything about it, because some people, they'll just hold it in. There'll be a similar version of you, perhaps, maybe lashing back as well. But you allow them to. I'm not saying to be taken advantage of or to be, pushed around or anything like that. What I'm ultimately saying is, because you have this new version of yourself stepping up, finally, in life, out of all this time, finally, there's a new me in town, but this is how the new me is going to operate. You listen. And I'd like to say the only way you can really do that is because you started listening to yourself. Otherwise, it would be a false sense of listening, and it would probably turn into a problem. When you authentically listen to yourself, you will be able to authentically listen to one another. How you listen to yourself is how you will listen to one another. Listen to another. And what I'm trying to ultimately say is, how you treat yourself is how you will treat another. So maybe they don't understand, or they're confused, or maybe it becomes a little conversation. It doesn't have to be a long one. You don't have to support and get all into it. Maybe you're mistaken, or they're mistaken, or what have you, but it's a short, maybe dialogue. If someone really doesn't understand, perhaps they're being manipulated, but it doesn't matter, because you're not going to drag it out. There's this thing called agreeing to disagree. It doesn't mean you end it disrespectfully or minimizingly or condescendingly or what have you. No. All right, well, you know what? You allow yourself to continue being you. If you really are being a problem, just saying, maybe you are being annoying, or maybe, I don't know. I can't imagine how, because maybe it's the way you laugh, or I don't know. You're not a kid anymore. You're not like making noises and being a disruption. So why would anyone really have a problem with that? But let's just say you are being like that. Then you realize it, or you try to realize it. That doesn't mean you're giving in. You're trying to understand. It doesn't mean you need to go back and then rehash the whole thing. No, the whole point is you're now on this level. You're a different person. You're trying to understand yourself. You're okay with being wrong instead of avoiding being wrong, because maybe you are wrong. Maybe you're not. In a way, all that's irrelevant, because you're just being you, looking at it for the way it is, or for the way how it could be, and you move on. If any apology needs to take place, okay, fine. That doesn't mean you're giving in. Because I'd like to say this would be rare when someone really has a problem with you. This is why you should allow yourself, but realize somebody could have a problem with you. The only reason you're having that idea is because you were punished to be you. Most people aren't going to punish you to be you. And if they are, be prepared for that. This is how it may go down. I'm not afraid now. I'm not afraid to be me. I'm also not afraid to talk about how someone has a problem with me. What's wrong with me? Wherein lies that is, well, according to how you really feel about yourself deep down, based off your life experiences, you have a problem being you. So now we're working, in a way, in conjunction or against, or what have you, but nevertheless there is a new you, at least in this moment. So remember, even if there was to be an interaction, there's no shutting down, there's no giving in, there's no being forceful. It is what it is. Respectfully move on with your life. But through that, there's some level of understanding about them, about you, about it, the situation, whatever, because we have to at least allow ourselves to give the whole thing the benefit of the doubt in an effort to truly just be ourselves, being open. This is called openness. Closedness is, I'm going to fight you, I'm going to disrespect you, or I'm going to give in. That's all closed. You're closed off. You're continuously being the same version of yourself that you've been your whole life, which is to really just be afraid. Now, I don't care if they have a problem with me. I'm going to be me, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, maybe you're really still afraid. Perhaps that's a compensating mechanism. Look how negative you're being. You know? And I'm not suggesting to contribute to making a situation worse than it actually is, because there are some people that can be dangerous. And that's not an excuse. It's not a program in my brain saying, well, don't go there. No. You have to be mindful. You have to realize the situation. Maybe you shouldn't get involved. Even if you're just trying to be you and you're trying to improve who you are in your life and your happiness, well, no, this is dangerous. For real. This isn't just, my brain. No, this, have discernment is the whole idea. So pretty much this was step one. Just being you and allowing yourself to be you, and realizing if anyone really does have a problem with that, well, you're this new you, aren't you? Or you're trying to be. Confront it. And have reasonability and self-respect while respecting them. And don't make matters worse. Doesn't mean you're giving in. And maybe sometimes it does feel like you're giving in, or you are giving in. But look, you at least confronted it. The confrontation, it is about the situation and whomever else is involved, but it's more so about you. You're confronting your child self in these situations more than you realize it. Okay. So let me get to step 2. Step 2 is similar, but it's not about you now just being you. Because you should just be you no matter what. But this is about having a problem with them. Having a problem with what they're doing or what they said, or just setting up boundaries, correcting somebody, or disagreeing with another, or whatever. You're allowed to sound angry. You're allowed to sound annoyed. Just remember, your emotions are a representation of you. You don't have to sound angry or annoyed or have your emotions really become so a part of your experience, but it is your experience. You're allowed to feel them. I wouldn't dismiss them no matter what we do. And I encourage how you could allow that to be a part of your experience, to be heard. As long as you're not being toxic about it, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just being you. Contribute to a healthy, balanced you, or a reasonable you. Is it wrong to be mad? Is it bad? Again, it's been ingrained. It's not safe to be angry. It's not safe to go against. So this is why we want to do this. We want to tell people what we don't like, because that, in a way, is allowing us to reprogram that part of our brain again that didn't do that was uncomfortable doing that, or identified that as fear. So now you stop doing that, and you start, telling somebody simply stop, or I don't like what that is. And again, you don't need to, just like step 1 is why I was saying it's similar, because yes, it is about you and how you feel, but it's about you simply saying something that you have a problem with. And you shouldn't have to go into such a whole thing about it. That's a part of the coping mechanism, and sometimes we need to do that in order to advance further. But all I'm trying to say is, ultimately, when you start getting better at this, you don't have to go into a full explanation. And I'd like to say, try to start off not doing that, because maybe you don't have to go through a phase of, well, I always explain myself. No, you don't have to. If you have a problem with somebody, the way their tone of voice is, or clearly, they could understand. Maybe you could point out, or maybe you could just, bring it to their attention. Well, the way you just talk to me, or you're talking down to me, or you're mentioning that about me, or whatever, just to bring it to their attention, well, they should think about that. Some people do, and I'd like to see a lot of people don't. But it is what it is. What I'm trying to say is that may be enough, and now you're reprogramming your brain to stand up for yourself. It's okay to be you. It's okay to say no. It's okay to disagree. Now, the other person may not like this, and I'd like to say most likely they're not going to like it. Nobody likes to be told no. No one likes to be corrected. No one likes it when somebody has a problem about them. But isn't that life? And isn't that what we've been programmed, if you're similar like this, to avoid or to fight against? I'm not saying here to fight against it, and I'm definitely not saying to avoid it. What I'm saying is, we allow this to be uncomfortable, to have a face-to-face problem with somebody or what have you. We allow this. It's going to be uncomfortable because, again, it's our self we're facing. Our inability to do this, that's uncomfortable. Our brain that believes wholeheartedly to the day you die that this is a threat to do. This is dangerous. Don't do it. So, if the other person doesn't like this, right? Now you're being respectful. I'm not saying you can't have emotions tied to how your tone of voice is. I think that's really healthy to do. But you're being respectful and you're being reasonable. What the hell's the problem? Well, the problem is that person may not like this. It's uncomfortable to say how you don't like what another person's doing, or you disagree, or can't stand it, or whatever the case is. But realize someone's more likely, doesn't mean they're going to, but I'd like to say they're more likely to work with you if you're not disrespectful, if you're not like overly barren, if you're not berating them, right? If you're not condescending. Basically, if you're respectful, reasonably so, they're more likely to work with you. What this is called just being assertive. I'm going to assert myself. This is my perception. Maybe they're going to give me theirs, maybe not. Maybe I should ask them. I don't know, but the whole point here is, if there's a problem and you mention it, most likely you're not going to say, well, what do you think? And if they want to say something, then that becomes a conversation. Again, you give everyone a benefit of the doubt, but it's not a hashed out hour discussion. Not even 5 minutes. I'd like to say, okay, this is what you think, this is what I think, this is where we're at. I agree with you to a degree, or maybe not. You agree with me to a degree, or maybe not, or maybe we're on different wavelengths, but this is where we're at. This is what needs to take place, or this is what you're not tolerating, or whatever. And again, you're not putting yourself in a dangerous situation. The danger is associated in your brain to not be like this. And also, there's another dangerous situation where we should be avoiding if it's something physically dangerous. Yeah, that don't be. I'd like to say, well, just be smart, right? Have discernment, just like in step 1. So you're not being passive, you're not being aggressive, you're just being assertive. Well, no matter how you look at any of this, right? I'll just summarize this. No matter how you look at any of this, the real root of the problem is just being you. That's the root. That's the problem. No one else, you. This is what's uncomfortable. So, you have no choice but to improve this. Or maybe you could say you have a choice. And if you do have a choice, here's the 2 choices. You could either continuously live the way you've been living, which is ultimately your life without being your authentic self, which, by the way, is miserable anyway. Or you could try to be you by following some of the steps or anything that could help to encourage you to be you, which will still feel uncomfortable, might even feel miserable as well. So it's like, well, you're between two rocks. Don't take the path of least resistance, or at least if you do, continue to work at going down what's the most uncomfortable, because it's harder to just be yourselves. So at the very least, trying to lead in the direction of the likelihood. There's likelihood that you'll be more you, an improved you, over time, even in small increments, whether you realize it or not. Or by doing nothing, you stay the same.